Thank you very much again. Our last session before the lunch is managed by or moderated by Dr. Ayman Erbed, the Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Qatar University. Please welcome him. This session will be about the challenges in adopting the cloud in the broadcasting industry. Dr. Ayman, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the great session. So I'd like to start by inviting the panelists. We'll start with Wolfgang Wagner. Wolfgang Wagner is the Director of Technology and Broadcasting at WDR, the Germany public broadcaster. The second panelist is Brandon Murphy. Brandon is a Group Technology Manager at the Broadcast Services Media in New Zealand. And Ram Ramachandran, GM and Head Enterprise Middle East and Africa, Tech Mahindra, and our friend Rainier from Microsoft. Yeah, thank you all for being here. So we are a little bit shifting gears to sort of a technology-driven session. So this session today is about the challenges in adopting cloud infrastructure for our business here, the broadcast industry. And really it's very critical as an industry to understand, are we gonna wait until we become irrelevant? Are we gonna wait until we lose our market share? Is it the right time to think about cloud? As Rainier said, there's a lot of opportunities. So we really want to understand. We really want to understand the dynamics. For example, my daughter Selma, that's 3 years old, she knows YouTube. She'll tell me, Daddy, I need YouTube, open it for me. So if we know that that generation and the generation before is moving toward cloud, toward things that are easier to access, we have to really, as an industry, question this trend. And on the other extreme, is cloud computing sort of a hammer that's looking for nails? Is it something that anybody who's doing the usual web hosting now is selling as a cloud? Is it sort of something that is people are overselling? So that's where we want to tease out today with our panelists. And I would like to start with just continuing on the usage of cloud. And I think we can start with the users, like the broadcasters, Wolfgang. What do you think in terms of the opportunities? What are the places where cloud actually makes sense for you?
Yeah, I think as a user, we have a special responsibility for the operation of the services. And you may know in Germany, and I think that is not very different from many other countries, even commodity IT from the cloud is not a standard. Therefore, when we are talking about and trying to go to the cloud with professional services and applications from the broadcast industry, it's not usual. But there are a lot of reasons to do the way and to go the way, and maybe I explain ours. For the next 2 years, the next 3 years, we have to renew our 11 regional studios, which we are operating in the western of Germany. And today we have, of course, a dedicated hardware, we have dedicated software, but we do not have a permanent performance we need from the infrastructure. And of course, we have a lot of pressure, as many public broadcasters do have it around the world, to reduce costs. So we are looking for models with new functionalities. For example, we have to work mobile more than we did it in the past. We do not only have to do it in Germany, we have also another 6 studios worldwide from New York, Washington, via Nairobi and Moscow. And so we are looking for new models of working together, and that also with solutions which are much more flexible than to have it with a dedicated infrastructure.
So
That is the most reason for us.
So if I take that and maybe push it to Brandon, and you as a provider, and maybe a situation similar to Qatar here, where you have a smaller network and you have very specialized audience, do you think cloud there is giving you an advantage in that setting in New Zealand?
For my company specifically, we've already dipped our toe into the cloud environment. We've outsourced our VOD infrastructure, so all of the streaming and encoding for our video on demand services, our email services, and we've already got a cloud provider for collaboration with document sharing and a few other bits and pieces. The struggle we have with connectivity in New Zealand is that a lot of the data centres are based in Sydney. There aren't any nodes in New Zealand as such, so we're very reliant on the international bandwidth, which can be expensive. And also we're moving big heavy files around and broadcasting large files, large bit rates, heavy codecs. So the challenges there become very real. And the packetized SDI or the video over IP standards are still very new and being developed. So we're still very early on in this phase.
So if I follow up on that and maybe ask the provider, we start with Ram. So third party, depending on a third party to serve content, depending on a third party, as a provider of that service, how do you deal with that sort of fear? People are paying money, they might be disconnected, they might be hacked into. What do you feel as a provider that you can accommodate some of these fears for the broadcasters?
Sure. So from our perspective, just talking about cloud as a technology, and in the industry there comes a time where a technology comes at an inflection point. So for the media industry, we believe that it is an inflection point where the question is, why not, but how to? So it has moved from more a question of what part of the media cycle are you playing in. If you are a media content creator, as in some of the cases, the use cases that you would use for cloud is different. For example, the workflows that cloud enable, as was brought by some of our partners out here, Microsoft, the conventional technologies do not provide. Also, what is the size of the organization? If you are a very niche content creator or publisher, if you are boutique, you would look at channels that can make you or make your content reach out, and cloud provides for an environment for reaching out. On-demand service was spoken about earlier. What is the cheapest medium for enabling on-demand, and technology provides for it. So cloud has become more an enabler to most of the requirements that are coming in. If you are a core broadcaster, likes of an Al Jazeera, and we've seen the adoption, you've got quantum of tape libraries. There is no way but to use cloud for digitizing and storing. So the use case depends on which cycle of the media curve you are in. But increasingly we are seeing that the fear of usage of cloud is going down. Paul did speak about, the cost of broadband keeps on going down. There was a time when a few kilobytes or megabytes was difficult, and now we are talking about gigabyte of information. The channel of access of content is becoming stronger, and we believe that the interplay of telecom providers along with media companies as it emerges will help in dissuading some of the fears. Earlier there were questions on, in remote parts, there is no connectivity, will our content reach if it is on the cloud? But we believe that it is a matter of 2 to 3 to 5 years, when these technologies will be all pervasive. So it's more a mindset, and also picking the right case or use case for adoption, depending on which cycle of the media curve you are in.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, we have at least two sides, the side of the consumption and the side of also the production, people in newsrooms, people working together to produce. So what, as a provider also of cloud services, how do you see both, and which one is sort of pushing you forward?
Obviously, the cloud has been very popular with consumers since many years. So many of us are using cloud-based email, for instance. We are all using cloud-based search engines. So that's kind of standard in the consumer world. On the media side, we've seen cloud adoption initially mostly on the distribution side. So people were using the cloud for streaming video on demand or live. And we are now seeing the cloud increasingly being adopted along the value chain, as I tried to explain, in post-production, in news gathering, so pretty much along the entire news production process. Now, I would like to make a remark about your earlier question about people trusting into the cloud. It's a very important point, and at Microsoft we're taking that very seriously. We have a number of programs underway where we are working with third parties in order to get the cloud platform, our cloud platform, certified under security and data privacy considerations. And we know that people will only use the cloud, both consumers and media organizations, if they can trust that cloud. So trust in the cloud is very important, and we as providers need to be proactive in that area and have to make investments there. Now, I would say, if you look at the consumer services, some other vendors are using the data that they get from those services for their own business purposes. Now, we have a policy of if you entrust your data to our cloud, we will not use that data for anything else than your own purposes. And I think that's very important for making sure that you can trust that cloud.
Just to follow up, just because I'm interested, so the data comes to you mostly encrypted or just plain?
Actually, that's a customer decision. So you can, of course, store the data in an unencrypted way, and that's quite honestly still the common way of doing it. But there are some customers who are using our technologies to encrypt their data so that they can be absolutely sure, even if someone else kind of breaks into their cloud, they can still be sure that someone else cannot use their data.
Okay, excellent. I wanted to move into a little bit different topic related to, also, the data. You as a broadcaster have a lot of assets. Your bread and butter, create movies, create content that people want, and also buy content from other provider. And now it's potentially, if we say cloud is the next step, it will move to the cloud. So how it will work with this data and with the content you get? What are the issues?
You are right. You described the situation very well. I think one of the challenges is to bring the different functionalities together. So you have on the one hand side, you have your dedicated hardware and software in your infrastructure. You have to manage this, you have to operate this. And on the other hand side, you have to combine it maybe with a hybrid solution of a cloud. You have also to manage this, you have to manage this together and to be at the same time, to be efficient, I think. So we have to find, beside these functionalities, also flexible models to combine these two worlds, to manage the data which is distributed of different places maybe over the world, and with different technical solutions. That is not so simple as you can talk about this, I think. I think it's a big challenge to do this.
And just maybe to drill down, maybe with Brandon and the others, is this data sometimes have restrictions, like sometimes copyright with you cannot put it somewhere else. So what would you deal with that, other than the public-private cloud?
So that's an interesting challenge in that a lot of our contracts with the studios specify that we have to maintain copies or their high-res copies of the content on our premises. And often in closed, locked rooms, they're very strict with how we store that media. And they can then be very difficult to deal with at a contractual level if you want to change anything in that space. MediaWorks our primary channel is a news and entertainment channel. So we've got the dual challenge of content we create, getting that out, but also content that we acquire and getting that in. So we've got this dual workflow going on that makes it very difficult at a fundamental level to tailor any workflow.
Yeah, and just also to continue on this, now we have a model where you are adopting cloud, and the cloud has a business model in its own. You have to, if we talk about the cloud as the public cloud, it's multi-tenant. You buy the service, they buy the capex, and they try to put as many people on the platform to make it cheaper. And that's why a lot of media providers, if they go there, they might reduce their cost. They might. We have to agree. Maybe we had some news that the OPEX might be a bit high to keep going. I know you really want to say something.
Yeah. So I have to interrupt you maybe for a short time, because I'm not sure, do we have really the business models for the cloud usage combined with the flexible model of using the infrastructure? I'm not sure that we have this yet, and I think we have to develop it together with the cloud providers, with the infrastructure providers. I do not so clear that it is yet done.
Yeah, that was, so I wanted to see, like, from a cloud provider, Ram, what do you think? So you have a business model, it's clear, it makes it cheaper, but for the broadcaster, what would make things cheaper for them too, from what you hear from them?
Right, I'll come to that, but just before that, there's this interesting discussion, or always this constant debate between a private cloud and a public cloud.
Yeah.
Now, fact remains that there's never going to be an ideal cloud environment. It will always be a heterogeneous cloud environment. So how can organizations bring in adaptive techniques or technologies to manage this hybrid technology environment? You can have equal workloads on Azure, you can have workloads on Amazon, you can have workloads on Alibaba, you can have workloads on Rackspace, depending on your business model or depending on the country that you're servicing. In our parts of the world, there's an added complex dimension of the telcos, where the telcos might have their own data centers, and that they might be a private cloud service provider through whom you extend. And then you have your own internal archives or your own internal content, which also needs to be provisioned. So the best models that would evolve over a period of time are the models that can allow for these heterogeneous environments of private cloud and public cloud. There'll never be an ideal case of only public or only private. And I think as organizations are evolving, they will need to invest in tools and technologies that can provide this coexistence of private and public. And depending on the business model, because it's also a question of the economies of scale, what can, and that sort of brings to that particular point of, what is the most dollar, the biggest buck for the dollar, if I may use the term, comes from which particular choice, or how do you manage these two environments together?
Yeah, so you are, go ahead.
Maybe I can comment on that as well. We have seen early cloud adoption with some of the standardized services, the commodity services like storage, like compute, and that is relatively easy to price, and this is where the economies of scale are easy to achieve. We are now discussing much more specific applications, specific to the media industry, like for instance news gathering and post-production. And this is where the economies of scale are not as obvious and as easy to achieve. And this is why I would honestly say that probably for us as a provider, I would think that our pricing models are probably still too complex, and we need to bring those down to map our pricing to the value we deliver to the media organizations. So that is still a challenge that I'm seeing. We are talking about storage capacity, virtual machines, CPU power, data throughput, all technical terms. This is what our pricing is today based on. While a media company will look at, I have to edit so many hours of video, I need to stream so many hours of video, they don't care how much storage that takes and how many compute cycles.
Yes, yeah, so it's very clear, like somebody is selling cycles, bandwidth, storage, and somebody wants really a service and doesn't really know how much it will cost. And I think we even have stories from Netflix where at some point it was very expensive to stream. So you put your data there, but when you come to stream it, it's very expensive. So is it OPEX? Is it really something that is long term, or should they do hybrid? So I guess just put me in my next question. What are, if you are thinking as a broadcaster, Do you think that we have the tools and maturity of the things that will make you move from your sweet spot where you know all the editing, you know everything, to something that is cloud-based?
For the moment, I don't think so that we have all these tools, and I also do not think that it is a revolution which will happen going from dedicated infrastructure to the cloud. I think it's an evolutionary way we have to go, and we have to develop these tools together with the industry, with the infrastructure and the cloud service providers. They are not available. You cannot take them from the stores and bring it in operation. Therefore, the needs of our business, I think, is too special, as Rainer Keller has told. We have so huge data resources we have to handle that is not comparable with an email archive. It's much more, and therefore I think you also need very special tools which have to be developed together with the partners.
So the providers maybe, or the broadcast. So do you believe, Brandon, you have what it takes to move for in terms of tools and?
Yeah, I think we're a lot closer than perhaps you do. The standards are becoming more stable. You see the manufacturers, the Sonys and the Everts and the equipment manufacturers moving in the same direction now, rather than off on their own little tangents. Although to your point, it is very much an environment where we have got specific and bespoke needs. The manufacturers, during the times of developing 2022 as a standard and 2110 as a standard, they kept touting commercial off-the-shelf equipment, where it's not actually commercial off-the-shelf equipment. You're not buying a video router, sure, but you are still buying very high-end Cisco routers or Arista routers or equipment that's tailored to your needs. It's not just to go into Fry's or any electronic shop and pick up a switch and away you go. Yeah. We do have very specific requirements for the equipment we use.
And especially if we really think the future will be sort of incremental, like we will not move from today to tomorrow cloud, what is the type of maybe integration with existing type of tool chains and media production and media distribution that maybe would be useful for us, Ram, to move into that path?
So first and foremost, the kind of collaboration that we are seeing now between the media players and the technology companies is increasing. Just because the sheer scale of the problem is more intense than a conventional problem. So, just like what he mentioned, one size will not fit all. And it is the more we are speaking to the media companies and the publishing companies, we see that everyone's dimension actually is a reflection of what their business model is. So depending on what they are aspiring to do is where the path to technology would lead them to. Technology is just an enabler to the end state business model. But I think the technologies have matured to a state where most of the cloud provisioning requirements are getting easily met.
Yeah, thank you. So do you want to add to
Yes, just one thought. This is exactly, as Wolfgang Wagner explained, the requirements of the media industry are quite unique. And this is why we as Microsoft are partnering with industry-leading companies like Avid to address those specific requirements. So we can provide the platform, but it does require the industry-specific knowledge of partners like Avid to really make it real for the media industry. And this is why we believe in the approach of partnering rather than reinventing the wheel ourselves and trying to do it all ourselves. So Microsoft in that regard is also very much looking to partner with the leading players in the media industry to make it happen.
And to follow up also on the human part, we have talked a lot about technology, but if we are to adopt this new model, it will not be only just getting the technology, but getting our colleagues or getting new colleagues who have the skills. So what skills I think the whole panel maybe think will be needed going 10 years from now to be a media professional?
Yes, I think that the skills of the people is very important, and from the perspective, I think you have to have in the company people who have a very broad education. They have to know a lot of things about traditional broadcast technology, but they have also, and that is growing, to have the need and the information, the knowledge about IT services, IT business, and the handling of IT. And you have to bring both together. That is new skills, new combined skills for the people which you have to generate, maybe also together with the universities.
Nice. And so what IT skills would you think, Brandon?
So this is a challenge we have in New Zealand as a small industry. Finding people that know broadcasting is very difficult. And as an industry, it's getting smaller as we try and reduce our technology footprint and make savings in the plant we buy. Finding IT people, though, is very easy. And so now it's just whether or not we just hire, IT staff or IT people and teach them the little bits of broadcasting they need to know, or do we try and find broadcast people and teach them the IT bits they need to know? And it's a big challenge that we have constantly when we're trying to recruit staff.
Yeah, I'm trying to advertise the IT skills.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But also from the provider perspective, what are the things that you are trying to make so it's easier to adapt your tools?
So just, I'm tempted to answer to that.
No,
because
go for it.
I have a slightly contrary view on that. Never before have we felt the need and the requirement coming up from the industry on cloud architects. Because, and I'm using the term from another industry, the big data industry, the volume, velocity, and variety that media is offering is humongous. Now, let's take a provider like Amazon. They do about 32 releases in a year, and the price keeps on going down, so does Azure. Now, how do you understand all that and fabricate an architecture that will drive the benefits that you're requiring both from technology and price point? Everything goes hand in hand. And the need for the technology professional to be multi-skilled in a cloud environment is very different from a standard software development lifecycle curve. It's a more agile environment. The speed of releases are mind-boggling. So in order to keep pace with that, you require a very different kind of professional who's tuned more to this agile way of doing and working. And I think that's a challenge which both the industry and the technical bodies like us can jointly address.
Yeah, so
I think from a user perspective, we're in an age of big empowerment. All the new tools that we talked about really empower journalists to do more. But that also means that the borderlines of the old job roles are starting to blur. And people are now doing things that used to be separate jobs in the past. So, last night we had dinner with a journalist, and she told us about her, experience in, identifying the news stories, then doing the interviews, then doing the videos, doing the graphics if needed, doing, of course, the photos, doing the editorial work, the layout, and basically she can do this all on her own. She sometimes delegates some of that work to other team members, but with the tools, she's very much empowered to do all that. But that also requires, as my colleague said, for people to be more tech savvy and to be able to use those new technologies. So we definitely have as a provider, we have a challenge of making those tools as easy to use as possible. And some of the solutions that we spoke about are, I think, already starting to address that. So we will think that, we think, and that's what we're aiming for, making the use of technology easier.
yeah, and from the educational perspective, as academics, we are trying now to develop more interdisciplinary program where I have IT person, but at the same time, he needs to know video editing. So he will get some degree in computer science, but with a lot of multimedia processing, handling, and maybe some mass communication class where he's sort of ready to move into something like this. So I tried to dictate most of the question, but now I'll just give you maybe 1-2 minutes each to just say, where do you see the future? Do you see a lot of challenges? Do you see a lot of opportunities? And it's up to you. And we'll start from the end,
Sure.
maybe, since...
Yeah, I would say, the future of cloud is bright. And it's there to stay. Now we can't kid ourselves that cloud is not there. It's now become integral part of the way, our business is done. So when we were given the topic challenge or opportunity, my mindset thinking, what challenge? It's no longer a challenge. The way we would need to see cloud is an opportunity. Now, does it mean that we need to change the business model? maybe yes in certain cases. Yes, there are still questions and unanswered questions around security, which needs a joint addressal. The formats of security are different. But again, we haven't spoken about it, but the newer technologies like blockchain, if you have heard of that, the kind of, on a private or a public environment, you can create digital assets which are completely protected in a way that was very unimaginable even 3 to 5 years back. So there are technologies that are coming along that hopefully will address some of the challenges, but the way I see it is the future of cloud is bright. There is no dark lining there.
Future is bright, Brandon.
I think there are still very big challenges in the environment, not to be too disagreeable. But there is a path forward, and to touch on your point actually just before, the industry is moving so fast now, and you have to keep pace with what's going on. In a traditional broadcast sense, you get stuck in these capex investment cycles where you're only replacing something 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. But if something happens or something changes or a new standard comes out, you can very quickly get caught out of step with the rest of the market. And having a virtualized layer or a cloud-based platform where you can just swap out the software part or replace your hardware part independently is going to be very important, especially as we look to reduce capital investment and especially as we look to reduce costs. It's going to be a big part of how we move forward. I definitely believe that is true.
Yes, thank you, Brandon.
First, let me say that I'm happy with the development. Because I think it's the right way to improve the situation when people from industry, when people from the user side, from the service providers come together and try to solve the problems together. And I think the infrastructure, for example, in the cloud, is getting much more stable during the months and the years. So we have success steps, and we can this use as a basis for the next steps. So I would be happy, I personally would be happy if I could make a step in the evolution also when I have to renew the next 11 studios in WDR with cloud solutions, for example, for the post-production. That would be a very good solution because it could be very flexible, it could be very scalable, it could give new opportunities for functionalities working together to improve workflows, and maybe we can have more efficient, more cost-efficient solutions than we have it with the dedicated hardware and software we have today. So that would be a wish from me to realize this process, this big project with a cloud solution.
Yes, we are yet to convince the broadcasters. Go ahead, Rainier.
I think we are very
optimistically cautious.
Well, actually, I think we do realize that there's quite a bit of challenges to be addressed. We talked about some of them: data privacy concerns, security concerns, connectivity to the cloud, maturity of cloud-based solutions. So there is a number of things that we are still working on, but I think I have great confidence that working with partners, we will be able to address many of those challenges. We will make those cloud solutions easier to use and easier to deploy, and I think there will be a lot of benefits in terms of empowering people to collaborate more effectively, to be more creative, and actually reach audiences in new ways. So at Microsoft, we are kind of all into the cloud. We think it's the future of the IT industry, and it's certainly part of the future of the media industry. We think of cloud as the big enabler of media in the future.
Yes, thank you all. And I think there is a strong message. I think most of our panelists agree that the path forward will include some sort of consolidation and cloud service. And I think it's going back to the question of being relevant. If you were selling hardware as an IT 10 years ago, you would make a lot of money. Now it's about selling services. And that business of selling hardware almost disappeared to maybe only buyers from cloud providers. So I think being relevant as an industry, understanding what's the best use of the technology, where it really serves a purpose, away from just looking for like a buzz that you can sell a product within the short term. I would like to open at the end if you have any question as an audience, or you want to go for lunch. Yeah, I don't know where the mics are, but if I hear you, I can say it back.
The lady on the left.
اسمحوا لي أن أطرح سؤالي باللغة العربية. حنان
I
اليافعي
want
مدير
to
إدارة
ask
الرصد
my
والمناصرة
question.
في مركز الدوحة لحرية الإعلام. في وسط أو في خضم هذه الثورة المعرفية والمعلوماتية الهائلة، هل يتم التعامل مع جميع المؤسسات الإعلامية بغض النظر عن التوجهات السياسية أو الحزبية؟ بمعنى هل هذه الشركات
My question is, are these providers get involved in the process of information,
So I would
in the
like to
process of producing
translate.
information?
And I sort of heard that question before. So the question is, I am a news agency, I am a broadcaster. Sometimes I get into the wrong side of maybe a country, maybe a group, and would the provider, I think maybe it's a question for the provider, the influence, the political influence, and between people who are saying what they want to say and people who are trying not to let it go, and the dependence on a third party. So, okay, let me give an example. I am Al Jazeera. I said something against the US. I am hosting in Microsoft. What will happen?
Well, our answer would be it's your content. So we are not, an authority to control or censor the publication of content. Of course, we will adhere to local laws with regards to, what content might be published or might not published. So, there is differences in different countries in that regard, and we will respect that local authority and that local law. But at Microsoft, we will not be, as Microsoft, we will not be taking control over what you want to say or how
I didn't
how
want to
you want
put
to say
you
it.
on the spot, but I just wanted to give
No,
it
it's a valid point. If you trust the cloud provider to distribute your content, you will be asking yourselves, will that limit my possibilities with regards to what I can share?
Yeah. So I don't think any takers want to take.
Yeah, it's more about checks and balances, in that sense.
Yeah.
However, from our perspective, such things, I don't know what is the influence that technology can have towards the control of some of actions like this. But what technology does provide, and my friend from Microsoft did allude to it, social media analytics on the cloud is playing a very big role in capturing sentiments. So if we are able to figure out positive or negative sentiments in advance, and we are seeing a big uptake of social media analytics and social media, sentiment analysis specifically for media companies, it goes hand in hand in terms of your corresponding action to that particular event. So an event, if it's a negative event, how do you respond fast to that negative event? And then can cloud-based technologies like social media analytics provide you with that input fast enough for you to respond back and bring it back into a corrective action?
Yes. So maybe we'll take one more question from the audience.
Thank you. Khalid Taha, I'm the founder and CEO of Toot for Media Solutions. I'm quite happy to see that Microsoft is finally giving more attention to media industry, which is quite good. However, I couldn't figure out the differentiation between the content and the data when you said about the three angles. And this will lead me to the question back again, is the content still the king? Which I don't think so. For me, I see the CAS, content as a service, could be the king, because it's not that just the king. The second question also, how, as Microsoft, how do you see the challenges coming from the platforms like Facebook, YouTube, etc.? Because you talk about social media analytics and also search engines, where I see Facebook is going to come up with maybe surprises on the search engine for social and sentiment discovery. So how do you see, because what you're trying here to, you are talking about cloud, while I see Facebook, YouTube is like now 10, 15 years almost cloud-based services. already they are far beyond what we're seeing nowadays. So what are the challenges? How do you see how can you help the traditional media organization to transform into cloud while facing the challenges of the platform itself, which is controlling the distribution, contribution, and audiences as well? Thank you.
Okay, so a quick answer because we are running out of time. Go ahead.
Yes. So first of all, to your point, you're right. Of course, in the age of digital, content is data. So in that regard, technically, absolutely yes. The distinction I tried to make was obviously between content like audio and video and text, and data about, you know, who is using what content, who is watching what content. So understanding what the audience is doing with the content. That's what I meant by data, right? And to your second point regarding the other players like Facebook and YouTube and co, of course they have, you know, made user-generated content a big platform, and people are now spending increasing time with user-generated content. I personally, and this is not a Microsoft perspective, I personally believe that, you know, people will start to maybe appreciate again the quality of journalism that many you know, professional journalist organizations like Al Jazeera or the BBC are providing. Because from that user-generated content, we are now also seeing the downsides like fake news, you know, like things that are not professionally double-checked and confirmed. So now that everyone has his or her own broadcast channel on YouTube, also creates that big challenge that everything can get out there very quickly on those social media. So I personally have a lot of sympathy for, you know, professional journalists making sure that the news before they are being distributed are actually valid and correct. And yes, there will be different perspectives, different opinions, but I think the truth is the truth, and the truth still needs to be told. And as Microsoft, we are, you know, not like there to control that, but we are providing a platform for professional media organizations to stay in the game, and I think they have increasingly understood the opportunities of the cloud, and they are now starting to leverage it. So, but to your point, yes, media companies in general have a lot of catch-up to do with regards to using technology and using data to their advantage. They have great content, but they need to do more leveraging technology and data, like Facebook and others are doing.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks to the broadcaster showing us their fears and their desires for better, and for the providers for showing some of the really good technology and good perspective to move forward. Thank you very much, Ram, Brandon, Wolfgang, Grenier. It was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.